Hi, welcome to Nursedeck, a brand spanking new online community for nurses by nurses. I'm Jeannie Moore, your host, and today we're talking to Kayla Rath from Pittsburgh. Hi, Kayla.
Hi, Jeannie. How are you?
Good. So we always start out with, how did you fall into nursing? So that's our very first question for everybody: is tell us your journey from, what made you the decision to go into nursing?
Wow. Do we have a few hours?
Yeah.
Well, I feel like I've always had that nurturing aspect to me. And so when I was younger, I always kind of knew that I wanted to be in healthcare. I didn't know necessarily that I wanted to be a nurse. So actually my first undergrad degree, I did pre-med and decided not to go that route. And I kind of worked a bunch of different jobs for a few years after I graduated. And then my last job before I went into nursing school, I worked with a bunch of nurses and they all loved their jobs. And I'm like, I just want to do that too. I want to make okay money and be excited about going to work. And so that's when I went back to school. I went to an accelerated nursing program. And I originally wanted to do geriatrics. So I worked in a nursing home for a little bit. And then when we moved out to Pittsburgh, I jumped into postpartum.
Postpartum. Oh, talk about the ends of the spectrum. So did you start your education process in New York then?
So I actually went to undergrad in Philadelphia.
Okay.
I did 4 years there. And then, like I said, I worked for a few years and then I went back to school in Rochester, New York.
New York. Okay. So and I don't know the geography very well. I mean, I can tell you where New York is and where Pennsylvania is, kind of. So I'm in the middle of a cornfield in Iowa. When you say accelerated coursework to get your nursing degrees, that's because you came with 4 years of other education along the way. And so, because nurses, I've been a nurse for a very long time, we just can't seem to figure out how to come up with one degree. There's 172 ways to be a nurse, and we're the only ones that know that. So anyway, we have been faced with a tremendous past 2 years, and what I have found is we typically, when I'm talking to the nurses, one, we've all been impacted by COVID, but two, we also have been impacted with whatever mission or passion we have. And so we've kind of done this dance. So tell me what your experience, what were you doing? How did COVID impact you? Kind of tell us that story.
Yeah, so we moved to Pittsburgh the summer before COVID hit. And I was in the process of getting my Pennsylvania license because I only had a New York license. And then I actually started a month before COVID hit. So I was literally just coming off my orientation.
Oh my word.
When it all went down. So it's funny because I don't really know anything different on my floor.
So what kind of floor were you working on the postpartum?
Yeah, so mother baby, we do couplet care. So I take care of both moms and babies.
Yes. And so welcome to nursing. So you're baptized by fire, which is par for the course.
Yep.
So what kind of precautions, what kind of things did they do for the moms and babies during COVID?
They really pushed a lot more. They've been trying to for years, but they pushed a lot more once COVID happened to do rooming in. So whereas years ago, most people, when they came to postpartum, they'd be like, oh, just put the baby in the nursery all night.
Right.
We want to get some sleep. And it kind of transitioned to, hey, you should really have the baby in the room the whole time with you, especially for safety reasons, because we really didn't know how it was really transmitted or what was going to happen to newborns if they potentially got COVID. So there was a lot of like nervousness around that. And so that was kind of the way like the hospital almost was able to implement rooming in was, hey, the pandemic.
Right. Well, I remember seeing a movie one time where the mom was in her room and they would put the baby in the drawer from the nursery and she would open up the drawer to grab the baby. It's like, so times have changed
Oh yeah.
tremendously with
Yeah.
what we're doing. And it never stops. That's the one thing I love about nursing is you go into nursing because you love to constantly learn, and it's just the most amazing field. So, so tell us about a little bit about your passion, the other component of what you've been working on for the past couple of years.
The union?
Yes. The big U word.
The big U.
Yeah. Yes. What happened?
It was honestly, it's been a whirlwind. I'm like looking at it now, like, wow, we did all that. That's crazy. But yeah, so when I got hired right before the pandemic, there was just like rumblings about a union. People were like, oh yeah, should we have a vote? Should we not have a vote? Like, is that something that we want at this hospital? Our network already had a few union hospitals. So that's kind of how things got started. I think we saw them and what they had and their protections. And so when I got started there, I had a few other nurses, seasoned nurses, come up to me and say, hey, like, I know you're new, but like, this is the union. This is what we want to do. Like, is this something you're interested in? And I was like, yeah, let me go to a meeting. Let me see like what they have to say about it before I like, commit to anything. And they really did not have to do any convincing on their part. I was like, yep, I'm in. Like, this is definitely something that I want to be a part of because this is going to be big. Yeah.
Right. So it's funny because I have never been a part of a union, and in the states that I've lived, there's never even any rumblings about it. Wow. But I do watch people's perception. And I was watching these doctors talk about what was going on in healthcare and the scowls that they got on their face when they talked about, well, we really think that's the nurses union causing that. And I thought, apparently they don't really appreciate the nurses union. So what was the impetus that formed the connection of nurses to go and unionize? What were they kind of fighting for?
Yeah, the main thing was staffing, like 100% staffing. And then obviously like pay and benefits and that kind of stuff was like the key thing. And I think that the pandemic only helped us gain the traction on all of those things because, staffing just got worse. And we had a lot of nurses that hadn't got raises in over 10 years.
That's insane.
Because either they had, been a nurse for over 20 years and they, hit their cap.
Right? Oh,
yeah.
That's just sinful.
It is crazy. Sorry. And with everything that we went through, like during the pandemic and them calling us heroes, and we were just like, this is crazy. We need to fix this. But yeah, I think overall too, it was just nurses finally saying, and like obviously the pandemic pushed it a little bit, but we were finally saying like, we want to be treated with respect. We want to have a say at the table. Whereas before, they could change anything at the drop of a hat. If they wanted to change our pay or not give us raises or do XYZ, they could do it. They didn't have to ask us first. And now that we have a contract, they have to come to us before they can change anything, which is like the main thing. That was really like the goal of the contract was these kinds of protections.
Right. Well, it's really unfortunate. I actually work on the employer financial side of the health insurance realm now. And what I have noticed, especially in the last 10 years, is the treatment of employees just in general across the board. And no one can afford health care, and the
Nope.
employer may be paying hands and fists money for their health insurance coverage, but then the patient's employees can't use it because we have blown up healthcare because of there's a lot of people with their hands out getting a lot of money, and it's not the people who are doing the work or caring
Mhm,
for the patient. It is just mind-boggling. So
mhm,
it's a really it's time that we start talking about it, and then we start understanding what the nurse's role is. I think our level of division over the last 60 years and organizations, I'm mad at the ANA for an example.
mhm.
60 years we've been talking about one way to become a nurse.
Mhm.
Really? Why do you think we're in the mess we're in? It was because we haven't had a unified voice.
Right.
You've kept us at this. And then the other thing I found was nurses graduating from a nurse practitioner role, for an example, getting out and they're making good money. They're making the 130,000 a year. And now I look at their salaries and they're at 80,000. Okay,
Mhm.
so we've
Mhm.
got we've got a lot of work, and I'm glad I'm
Yep.
glad you have this on your resume early in your career because girlfriend, we're gonna be fighting for a while.
Well, and I think the thing too with like pay in regards to pay is nursing is majority women, and
Mhm.
I think as women we're not as pushy about pay,
Uh,
and that actually has come to bite us.
right.
I have talked to nurses on my floor, on other floors. We had an issue where there were new nurses being paid more
Mhm.
than seasoned nurses because nobody was talking. People
Right.
aren't talking about what they're making. And
Mhm.
so if she like this one girl on my floor, if she had known a while ago, she was like, I would have asked for a raise,
Right.
compensate for that, but
Right.
nobody knew. So, and this
Right.
all started to come out because of the union. And so, we were able to implement pay scales. So everyone
Mhm.
is making what they should for their years of
Mhm.
licensure, which is amazing.
Right.
Um,
Yeah. No, I have a million horror stories to tell you, and I can tell you those horror stories offline, but
yeah.
the pay with experience, and not every nurse is a good nurse.
Yep.
They're really
Hmm.
not. And
Hmm.
we talk a lot about eating our young, and on my call yesterday with Shannon, it was, did I eat people or did they eat me? And we don't know, but it kind of depended on the situation of where we were, what crisis we were in, and sometimes you get eaten.
Yep.
Is it a personal thing, or were you just like in the wrong place at the wrong time, need to get out of the way? So
Well, even stress. I think we're in these high
yes,
stress environments and, we don't have the staffing and, maybe like during the pandemic, especially where we don't have those outlets. We used to be able to, go to the gym or hang out with friends. And then the pandemic hit and now you can't do anything. You go
right,
to work and you come home and that's it. And so I think all of that just like escalates.
compounds.
And I know in my first interview with Nursedeck, I talked a little bit about my bullying situation at my first job, actually.
Uh-huh.
So, and then I've always made a promise to myself that I wouldn't do that to other people
Mhm.
because of what I went through and how horrible it was. So,
Was, yeah. Yeah. Well, and the thing and when you get older and wiser, hopefully, you realize that when nurses are starting, especially the younger ones as they're coming in, they don't know what they want to do. I mean, this may not be a fit for them. They
mhm,
may actually really belong in behavioral health and working with patients from a mental health perspective versus intensive cardiac care. I
mhm,
mean, and they're just feeling their ways, and I just don't think we have to be so mean in helping them find their home. I guess
mhm.
that's what it is. So, you have a contract, and I want to take have you take me through that whole process
Oh gosh.
of how you
Okay.
because I can't imagine getting a signed document by the powers that be. So please take us through that. Please take us through that step by step.
You know what's funny is I didn't even know the half of it or like what I was signing up for when I signed up.
Uh-huh.
um,
Uh-huh.
and then now that it's over, I'm like, wow, I can't believe we really did all that.
Uh-huh.
It was really intense. So basically, like I said, I started in February 2020, and there was the rumblings of the union, and they kind of roped me in. They're like, come to some meetings, learn about it, like see if you want to get involved. And I was like, yep, sign me up. I want to do this.
Uh-huh.
So I was on the nurse negotiating committee is what it was called.
Okay.
And we had at least one nurse from every unit. And our unit actually had, I think, 6 on the committee.
Yep.
So it kind of just depended on the involvement that your unit wanted.
So how many nurses were I mean, what kind of an army did you build? How many?
Yeah, I think originally, like when everyone first started up, we had about 50 on the committee.
Uh-huh.
And then because we had to do everything through Zoom during
Oh.
COVID, we kind of had people in and out. So like on any given like call, we had like 30 nurses at a time on usually.
Right.
Yeah. So then we went around the hospital and like had people sign like petitions saying they wanted to vote for a union, and then that kind of catapulted our union vote, and that we did in August of last year. And so that's when we voted it in, but we actually didn't start negotiations until January of this year.
Wow.
The hospital kept pushing things back, saying, we don't, with COVID, we just can't start this process with you.
Oh.
Yeah. So we were like, I think that might be.
Oh boy, that would have pushed my buttons.
Oh yeah. And we're like, you knew this was coming. We knew for months this was coming. So I don't know. It was just funny. But
Yeah.
so we finally started things January of this year. And we would have meetings just with the nurse negotiating committee and our union reps, where we would meet over Zoom, usually for 1 day a week, like 9 to 5. And this is like all volunteer, unpaid, like nobody got paid for this.
Right.
And we just like sat down and came up with proposals, things we wanted in our contract. If it was something like staffing, we made sure we talked with every single unit before putting anything into the contract or into our proposal, because we wanted to make sure that every nurse like on each unit had a say in what was going to happen to their unit. So that just took a long time.
Right.
And then intermixed in that, we had meetings, full day meetings on Zoom with the hospital administration. And usually those comprised of us giving them a proposal and then us waiting all day to hear back. So we did like during those off times, we did a lot more work on other proposals while we waited to hear back from them. But that was probably the most frustrating part about everything was just waiting. And sometimes they held on to things for like months, especially like economic proposals. They were like, oh, we need to talk to our people. We'll get back to you.
Right. Well, I don't think we make change until we sacrifice. I think that sacrifice is where. So you said union reps. And so are these like professional union people who know how to do this, or were they 2 nurses that just went out there and said, how we do?
No, so we our union is through SEIU.
And what does that stand for? SCIU? Sorry, don't mean to. Did I stump you? Because if other people are interested, let's get them hooked up.
Yes.
Right.
So it stands for Service Employees International Union.
Okay.
And they have lots of different like unions that they things that they work with. So it's not just healthcare, it's not just nurses. They do all different kinds of stuff.
Right.
And so we worked with people who work for the union, that company, and they have tons of experience. They had worked with the hospitals in our area to get them their unions. So they were able to, I want to be clear, the union is the nurses.
Right.
They were just like the people who guided us.
Right, the advisors.
Our advisors, exactly.
Advisors.
Yeah. So when we got to critical points where we were like, well, what do we do? What should we do? They would kind of come and say, well, this is what we've done before, or like, this is worth fighting for. Like, I think we can get these things, and these things we probably will not get.
Right.
So
if you all want peak scrubs, maybe we don't. There's a nice heft in our paycheck. Now that's something we could probably get. So are they being paid, or are they doing this out of the kindness of their heart?
They are paid. They're paid.
They are paid.
Yeah, so we actually, as union members now, we're going to be paying dues. And so when we were working on our contract, before we even had a contract, other unions through their major union network were actually helping us pay for us to get a union.
Awesome.
So that's how that works, is so when we start paying our dues, we're going to help someone else be able to get their contract, because these people do need to get paid. It's a full-time job. I mean, it's probably more than a full-time job actually. So they need to get paid.
It's funny because I've never really understood how. So it's like, so not only are you going through this stress as a nurse, working a full-time job, taking care of your family, but now you're asked to pay a little extra more so that we can pay these people who are going to help us. Mm-hmm. And I feel that way right now because there are so many different organizations who and folks who I would love to support, but at some point in time I can no longer afford $5 a month, Mm-hmm. And so I think we're at this point in 2021 where, man, it's so easy to give up, and we can't. We cannot give up. So
yes, and I think that was the thing that we all decided was, it's worth the money for us. Like, it's not really that much, and so if we can help other people do it too, and also it's for us. So like now that we have a contract, if the hospital goes against anything in the contract, we're able to file a grievance and then potentially take that to arbitration, which is court. Mm-hmm. So all of that is, people need to, do all that stuff. So they would have to get paid. So we're paying for that too, you know what I mean? So it's kind of, we're paying for our own protection is the way that I think of it.
Right. I love the fight and the vim and the vigor. And then I always worry about, because I worked on the flip side trying to help unions understand how to better manage their health plan. Mm-hmm. And so I see it from a different view, and I'm like, something's going on with this money. And that's when I get I'm just always really cognizant of, I am dedicating my life to the American employee in general. And it's time that the American employee, because essentially what you describe as a nurse was, wait a minute, I put in all this education and all this stuff, and I graduate and I'm making 20 cents less than the nurse who's been here for 20 years. Something's not right. And that's when it's hit. That first period of time after nursing school is a huge wake-up call. It's just crazy. So the one of the questions that I have down here is some of the key issues, and this is called the West Penn nurses. So help me understand what West Penn is. Is that the hospital?
Yeah, that's the hospital. Okay, we're West Penn Hospital.
Okay, West Penn Hospital. And then, so what are some of the key issues? Did we cover all of those?
So
and the staffing.
pay and staffing. Mm-hmm.
So when you are talking about the pay for a hospital nurse, because I have not been in the hospital for 20 umpteen years, I have no idea what's going on with the pay for nurses in hospitals. Um, where would you compare? Would you compare yourself to the other hospitals in your region, or did you?
Yeah.
Okay, so just
Yeah,
by
it has to be regional because I mean, coming from New York, I mean, I took a pay cut for
right,
Pittsburgh. So,
right,
I mean, you got to look at your region.
right.
Yeah.
Well, and I'm sitting in the middle of a cornfield where, you know, the pay hasn't changed in 100 years.
Oh gosh.
But I think it's interesting because the pay scale for the nurses, did you have the bouncing from hospital to hospital phenomenon to go for the better pay? Where the
We
nurses kind of,
So I think before the pandemic, definitely. But then once the pandemic hit, it wasn't hospital to hospital. It was they went to go be travel nurses.
right.
So they weren't even like a full-time employee at any hospital. They just were a travel nurse and they'd take a 13-week contract or whatever and be making double, triple
Mm-hmm.
what they were making at a hospital. Why, if
Mm-hmm.
if you have to have COVID patients, you're not going to take $30 an hour over 150.
Oh man, I cannot believe, because I'm old. I'm an old lady, and I cannot believe it is the same game. It is the same game. I think we need to change the game.
Oh yeah,
You
for
know,
sure.
because I was working, and the benefits that we got back in the day were oh, you get half the cost of the hospital bill when you come and be a patient here. We didn't
Hmm.
have health insurance, we didn't have pensions, we didn't have anything. And so I would go to work for the PRN pool because I got paid twice the amount of money and I worked 5 hours instead of, 9.
Wow.
I work a half shift and then I went on to better things.
Mhm. Yeah,
It's nursing. It's crazy.
it
So
is. Yeah.
tell me about because I know that, you got your daytime job, you got family, and now you're pulling this union together. So give me a day-to-day routine. What was it like? I bet you were burning the candle at both ends.
Well, what's funny is that I feel like when the pandemic hit, for a lot of people, it meant working from home, and so
Mhm.
everything changed for them. But I feel like for nurses and like for essential workers, it was like we had this pandemic going on, but we all still went to work, and we all had to like act like it wasn't a big deal.
Right.
So there's definitely a disconnect. I think my fiance actually had to he's been working from home since the
Home.
start of the pandemic. So I'm trying to like let him know, hey, like this it's a little different now, but yeah, like a typical day. I mean, especially during the height of the pandemic,
Mhm.
we we have a Facebook group for my unit, and every single shift someone would post, hey, we need nurses, like anyone want to pick up? This was every single shift. So
Uh,
like just the stress of seeing that right before you're about to walk into your shift and just knowing it's going to be a nightmare.
yeah, it's gonna be
Uh,
another one of those nights. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, exactly. And then also like walking into the unit to find that like another seasoned nurse has left, or
Uh,
like put their 2 weeks in. And it's sad because we've lost so many amazing nurses from like burnout and stress, and
mhm.
it's just we felt the hospital wasn't doing anything to retain us.
Yep,
And
right.
so that's also a big reason that we were pushing for the union, was because um, it was so easy for them to hand out, $10,000 for new nurses to sign on, but what were they doing to retain
Oh,
the ones that they
don't
had?
don't even get me started. It just I tell you what, nothing makes me angrier than and they are burning and churning through us faster than they have ever done. When
Hmm.
I Back in my day, the burnout rate was about 10 years. If you made it to 10 years being a hospital nurse, you kind of put your all in there. And now it's like 2 years. Are you kidding me? You want me to dedicate my life to this obnoxious school
Mhm.
process. I
Mhm.
get out and I can't take it anymore. In 2 years, that's just purely unacceptable. So let me ask you. So
Mhm.
as you're approaching and walking into the unit, where were the supervisors and your leaders and all the other administrative people? Were they on the floor helping you out, working with you?
I think you already know the answer to that.
Oh, yeah, they're off having coffee and tea somewhere,
Yeah. Right.
planning
I
their
mean,
futures.
we like the administration, I've never seen them on the floor. I think I saw them once, like when we were like during negotiations, because we had actually authorized a strike notice. So that was when they started like showing up on the unit. But yeah, before that, no. I mean, we've had to if we've been so short staffed that we've had to pull our manager or our supervisor as a charge nurse. So, I mean, not because they want to, but because we have no other choice. So,
So did they show up with their scrubs on and get to work?
I mean, sometimes it was like telling them when they showed up, like, hey, don't know what your plans were for today, but like, you have to be charged.
Right. Oh. So
Yeah.
so tell me, do you know anything about the CEO of the hospital? Do they have a clinician's degree? How much
Um,
money are they making on a yearly basis? That kind of
that
stuff?
I don't know if they have a clinician's degree, but I want to say they make like 8 million.
Mhm. And that's chump change. 8
Mm-hmm.
million, they're not doing something right. They're making only 8 million. I'm telling you.
Well, and the funny thing is, and the thing that I don't understand, is that the hospital is a nonprofit.
Uh-huh.
So that money should be being used to help the community, reinvest in your nurses that you have, the staff that you have. So what's the fight? I don't understand what we're why there's a fight in that. But you're not paying taxes, you're a nonprofit. So
So how do we fix that?
I think, I mean, I
Because
think personally that we all got to say enough is enough. And I don't think enough of us have reached that point.
right. Well, I think that I always tell nurses when they graduate, you have to understand law, you have to understand business, you have to understand technology, you have to
Yep.
understand politics, you have to understand how an organization lives and breathes. And
Mhm.
I personally blame America's human resources for a lot of the situations we find ourselves in because they've been trying to mold us with professional development.
Mhm.
And I think it's pure hokum. So
Mhm.
I'm not going to make
Well,
any
and
front.
we also know what side they're on.
Right.
You know,
Right.
they're on the employer's side at the end
Right.
of the day.
Right.
They're going to choose them because they get paid by them.
Right. Right.
So,
I tell you, we got to do something to fix this. I personally think we nurses have to become business owners,
mhm.
and we have to be calling the shots, and we have to band together to do that. So, what do you want the public to know? Little, let alone us old nurses who, we think we know it all, and you guys are in there still doing it. But then to educate the public is a whole nother story. And
Mhm.
I still don't think we're doing a good job. People always say, oh, nurses are so caring and compassionate. And I say, I have never taken a class in caring and compassion. I took classes in science.
Mhm.
And you're just lucky I'm caring and compassionate because that comes from. So anyway, right now we still have this facade towards the public of what we are and
Mhm.
who we are. And if there's still a lot of marketing and glitz, well, not maybe glitz, not the right word. How do we get the public to understand? People who are married to or have children who are nurses or moms who are nurses, totally get it.
Mhm.
But
Yeah.
the general public, they think we are just angels of mercy, here to care for you when you're not feeling well. I mean, literally.
Yep.
So how and name one famous nurse in 2021, right?
Yeah.
So
No, exactly. Because we were all called heroes, but they don't actually want to like do anything
Mhm.
about it.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
So what happens to when we all walk away? Just simply walk away.
I'm scared. I mean I really hope it doesn't get to that point, but I mean it looks like there's going to be another round and maybe more like of COVID. It's not looking
Mhm.
good. So there are a lot of people that could barely handle the first time. So what are we going to do when they all walk away?
Well,
Um,
and I'm looking at this from a national perspective, but I'm trying to glean this from the different folks I interview from around the country. I call it the Great American Walkout. And I'm like,
mhm, mhm.
you go, you're walking out, you've had enough, done. And I think that's when the administration goes back to their partners, the nursing schools, and say, pump more nurses out, get it done
Mhm,
faster.
mhm,
And then what happens to the quality of care,
mhm.
right? So
Yep.
I mean, we can keep walking out. Will they replace us with, at some point in time, um,
Yeah, it's not good. We have lost so many seasoned nurses, so nurses that have been on my floor for at least 2 years or longer, and we're not replacing them with seasoned people. We're not replacing them with people who already know the job, and that's fine. I didn't start on my unit knowing the job. I mean, I had already been a nurse, but I didn't know postpartum yet. So I'm all about giving new nurses a chance. But when all of your new staff is just graduating from nursing school, and I'm looking around, and I've been there a year and a half, and I'm one of the most senior people on the floor,
mhm,
that is a very terrifying feeling.
right,
When they're all coming to you and you're like, wait, there's not another nurse here that like
right.
knows what's
Well,
going
and so what we really have is we have lost the experience.
on.
The experience is gone. I remember when I moved to the dark side, which was health insurance, right? And then at one point in time I tried to come back, and the
Hmm.
hospitals would say, "Oh, you don't have any recent clinical experience."
That's just their way of being able to pay you less.
Right.
That's
It,
really what it is.
it's like, yeah, I didn't just, lose my mind when I was over there. I actually learned more
Right.
about medicine over there than I ever would have at the bedside.
Yep.
The whole thing is just insane. Um,
And that's why there's so many. So my floor obviously like draws a certain kind of person. A lot of
mhm,
them are
mhm,
young women who are starting their families. And the fact that so many of them like actually do want to stay at home with their kid for like a significant period of time, but feel like they can't because if they
right,
do that, they're not going to have a job.
right,
So they either do like part-time or, per diem, just to kind of keep their clinical, experience so that they can continue working when they want to pick up, full time again or whatever. But that's just sad to me. Like it shouldn't be that way.
Well, but I think we're losing a boatload of, and I don't want to say the shortcuts. We are losing so much experience when we lose our older nurses, and I have
Mhm.
somebody who has a brother who's the oldest nurse in a huge hospital, and he's 38.
Oh my gosh. That is crazy. That is so
And
crazy.
the old nurses one, so I'll tell you the reason why I'm so frightened by this, because I was a cardiac nurse, and I can remember, we used to pull the the lines for femoral artery for angiograms.
Mhm.
They would roll them in, and then we would be responsible for pulling the line. Well, you had to kind of know what you were doing, or this patient could bleed out. If you are completely freaking out, because we're talking
Mhm.
a big old femoral artery, right? Anyway, so I was trying to assist a younger nurse, and I've been a nurse for maybe 3, 4 years, right?
Mhm.
Anyway, it didn't go well. Didn't go well. And so the little nurse, I called her a little nurse because I'm just, me. And she's freaking out, and there's blood going everywhere. So I
Oh.
come alongside her, and I cannot find it. I'm like, oh shit. I'm going, okay, I'm pretty sure this bed soaked situation. I said, go get, yeah, the another nurse. And they brought her in. She's been a nurse for 100 years. She comes in and she wipes it off, feels, wipes it off, feels, wipes it off, and pushes with one finger. And
Of course.
she looks at us like this.
Mhm.
Like, you two monkeys in here messing around again. So it is that her response just said it all, right?
Mhm. Yeah.
She has seen so much. That level of experience is I cannot even imagine what it does to your stress level when your most seasoned aren't even there.
Mhm.
I'm mind blown that you guys are even doing this.
And when I first started, we had so many more seasoned nurses. I looked up to them. I asked them for help if I was unsure. I mean, I've had, patients where we've had hemorrhages and they're there and they are like, okay, this is what we're doing, blah blah blah.
Right.
And it's like, and now, like, you see, I'm only been there a year and a half, but I've seen enough. And like, I wouldn't say I'm the most experienced, but I feel like in those situations now I'm a lot calmer. But when it happens for the first time or even the second time,
Right.
you're in such shock. You're like, is this happening to me? Like,
Right. You're like taken aback by it. It's
Mhm.
breathtaking, and it's something you never forget. That
Nope.
immediate level of inner core fear
Mhm.
is it's something you never forget.
Mhm.
I want to know a little bit about so we haven't answered the question, how do we get the public to better understand us? I don't think it's us in scrubs on commercials
Yeah.
holding hands with elderly people and patting them on the shoulders. How do we
Yeah.
tell the public our story?
I think that's the $1 million question. I mean, yeah, it's been the thing that bothered me the most about this pandemic was all of the, oh, well, nurses are heroes. That sort of turned us into like martyrs, and
Mhm.
like, oh, well, you signed up for this and like you're just gonna do it and whatever happens happens. And we don't have a nursing shortage. We have
Right. Thank
nurses
you.
who
Thank
do
you.
not want to be treated the way that they're being treated. So they're
Right.
leaving.
Right.
It's not a shortage.
Well, so I'm standing up there and I'm about a big loud mouth. And I'm like, would you stop calling it a nursing shortage? That's what they told us back in 1970, whatever. We didn't have a nursing shortage then, and we don't have one now. We're
Mhm.
just sitting at home going, we can't work with you crazy people anymore.
Mhm.
There is
And
no
that's the
nursing
hospital's
shortage.
right. That's the hospital's way of being able to say, well, we're not really going to do anything to fix this, because if they did, I mean, if they actually did all the things, even all the things that we originally proposed in our proposals,
Right?
even half the things we proposed, I
Right.
mean, that would change things so drastically.
Hmm.
But we were literally getting, we would hand them something and they turn around and not even, it would just be like, no, like straight up, weren't not even going to give you any options, anything that we're willing to do. We just straight up no. So then we had to rework and be like, well, what are we willing to, cut back? And that was their strategy, right? That was how they negotiated. They always came back with a no instead of, so they were hoping that we would, slowly get down to what we already had, which we were like, that's not good enough.
Right,
That's why we're
right.
doing all this. So, um,
Well,
yeah.
the way I see it is we've got nurses and doctors and, allied health professionals, pharmacists, respiratory therapists, etc. And then we've got 170 different other ways with their hands out. I call them middlemen. And so I think what we need to do is nurses and doctors and their cohorts, the ones who actually know and practice medicine or nursing or whatever you call it, we go get our patients and go home.
Mhm. Mhm.
If you know
Yeah.
what I'm saying.
Mhm. Yeah,
So,
absolutely.
but well, let's not upset the status quo or anything. Um, so, um, you had there was another question on here about tech workers and the steel workers. And what do you think when you hear about the other workers organizing in Pittsburgh? Now we have the tech workers, which are like
Yeah.
engineers, and
Yeah. Mhm.
um, they're contract employees, meaning they don't get any benefits. They're coming in doing this project and they're leaving. And
Mhm.
then the steel workers, and then those who are helping freelance creatives. So I don't know
Mhm.
what you mean by creatives either. So girlfriend, just go ahead and explain all of this to me.
So I think that's like a journalist or somebody who's kind of like just getting a contract to write a piece for, or an
Right.
article or something like that. I think that's kind of the thing that they're talking about.
Mhm.
They also don't have any protections. They don't have any benefits. So they're kind of, being abused in that position. But yeah, no, I think it's amazing that all of these different people working across the spectrum are coming and asking for a union and protections, because I think that's, if you feel like you're in a position that isn't treating you the way that it should, then you absolutely should start that conversation.
Mhm.
So yeah, I mean, and they all supported us, like all of these different unions. We had rallies. They came and spoke and supported what we were doing. So like, yeah, absolutely. I think across the board, unions just support each other. It doesn't matter what kind of
Mhm.
union.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Are there physician unions?
I want to say no. I
I
don't.
have never heard of a physician union.
They should have one. I think they should, honestly. Like, I mean, and they're just in some of the situations, like I've seen doctors where, especially on my floor, you never know who's going to come in and deliver. So you have some groups that only have one doctor, but they have all these patients that are about to deliver. It's like it's not manageable for one physician. Like there needs to be something for them, I
Um,
think.
So are they, well, that physician is just taking on too many patients that have timing issues,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
So is that responsible? I mean, I think within the healthcare system, if we're really, really honest, we have the good, the bad, and the ugly.
Mhm.
And before I die, I would like to see all the good kind of congregate over here, and then the bad, and just get rid of the ugly first, foremost. You just can't do what you want to do anymore because you're in the ugly bucket. And then at the bad, little by little, need to lose their licenses. You know, I mean, because we only need the good people up here who have critical thinking skills, right?
Mhm.
And who have the patient at the center of everything that they do. And until we get there,
Mhm.
we and oh hey, by the way, how about we stop churning patients out so that we can care for them? Just another side note. I just love talking to you. This is just wonderful. So, where do you see the future? Where's the future of medicine? I wouldn't let my daughters become nurses, by the way. And they're probably your age.
Uh,
I won't ask you how old you are.
I'll be 31 in 4 days.
Okay, so they're your age. Ah, I just like talking to your mom. Don't you love it? Anyway, but I would not let them be nurses. I said, no way, Jose, will you ever become a nurse?
Mhm.
And then when they went to college, I said, they both called me like their sophomore year and said, we can't do this. We're the only girl, and I'm sitting next to this guy who's getting straight A's. And I said, well, that guy who's getting straight A's is not going to be able to talk to the customer.
Mhm.
You're going to be responsible for talking to the customer and translating what he's doing in his by his desk by himself because he has no social skills. Right? You're going to translate. And
Mhm.
so stay with it. But I made him get degrees in science. I didn't care what it was, but you have to have a degree in science.
Mhm.
And they would walk by each other during college because they're only 16 months apart.
Okay.
And they would walk by and give each other a high five. And they'd say, 14%. And I said, what does 14% mean? Out of all the girls who start out in science in college,
Mhm.
only 14% finish with a degree.
Wow. That's great. I guess I'm part of the 14%. My first degree is biology, so.
Exactly. Yes, that's why I love you. My oldest daughter is her name is Molly, and she was the one that called me and said, "Mom, I don't think I can do this. I'm going to go be a event planner." And I said, "And an event planner."
It sounds
So
fun.
I said the very first question I asked her is, "Where do you want to live?" And she said, "What do you mean?" I said, "Do you want to live out in the country with horses and dogs and green grass and land on a farm and lots of kids and or do you want to live in a major city like New York or
Mhm.
Chicago or?" And she went, "Well, I want to live out in the country." And I said, "What are you going to be event planning for? 4-H?" I said, "Go back to work and quit calling me at night worried about your degree." So
That's so
anyway, I just think that we need to do so much. And we spend a lot of time seeing the rot and then we yell at each other and throw the rotten fruit at each other. And it's like, no, this starts way, 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 way back over there.
Mhm. Mhm.
And until we look at our foundation of what we're doing and redirect it, we
Yeah,
got
I mean, we
to,
we we take it out on each other, absolutely.
right?
And you look around, you're like, it has nothing to do with us. It's the people above us that are that are
It's the
making this happen. They're orchestrating everything, and they're pitting us against each other for this reason because
right.
they don't want us to know what's really going on, you
Do
know?
you
So
know what that sounds exactly like?
I do. I
What
do.
does that sound exactly like? Oh my word.
Mhm.
Kind of sounds like our country.
Mhm.
I am getting goosebumps. Do you know why I get goosebumps?
Why?
Because there's been a substantial aha, as Oprah would say, an aha moment.
Mhm.
It's like, wait a minute, our schools are bad, our education system's broken, our pay is bad, our protections are bad, we burn out in 2 years. Nobody tells us this going in. Our schools and high schools say you have a aptitude for this. So that's the direction we go down. And they're so full of pohunky that you can't even see straight. So
Yep.
yeah, so it's time. I think what we're seeing is, and I have to go out on a moment of hope because what I saw happen in 2020 and the level of mental illness and I can go I live in a smaller town, college town. It goes like this, depending on if the students are here or not.
Yeah, right, right.
You know, but I can palpate the anxiety in other people.
Mhm.
We're like this, and we nod, and
Yep.
you might get a morning or afternoon if you're lucky, but you can palpate uh, the level of anxiety and angst that people have. And I don't want to go out like that.
Nope, nope,
Just
me
don't.
either.
So,
I was just saying the other day, I'm like, "Oh, I'm going on 5 years as a nurse," and I'm like, "I feel like it's aged me 20."
right, right. That's just it. Is that uh, we I talked to a gal who had been a nurse for 55 years.
Nope.
She was phenomenal and she was sharper than, I mean, she's the kind of person who would have come in, wiped the bleed a few times, put her finger on it. I mean, hands
Right,
down.
right.
And but when you're under fire and you're doing and you're pedaling as fast as you can, your level of experience just heightens like tenfold, I think.
Mhm.
So you have every right to say that you feel like you've been doing this for 30 years. But I have one other question for you on the
Yep.
COVID, because I have a sister who's a nurse practitioner in Chicago. I tell her that she's institutionalized. And what I mean by that is that, and I have other friends who are nurses in the system. They're also institutionalized, and they are ape crazy about COVID. And I'm at home in a small town. I'm old, I don't get out much, and censorship is the number one thing that drives me crazy. If someone has something to say or has an opinion, by all means, let me listen and let
Mhm.
me be the judge,
Mhm.
right? And the number of physicians who have been censored over the last 2 is astronomical. And nobody knows their point of view because they've been censored. We have physicians who are losing their licenses for prescribing pretty safe stuff.
Mhm.
We have, I mean, and I know some physicians who will tell me stories. I don't see the whole picture. But then we have physicians on the other side of the equation who are like my sisters and my friends who are institutionalized people. And the institutions are telling them, this is what is coming down from the CDC. This is what the study shows. Oh, by the way, we're going to keep you so damn busy with patients that you don't have time to do your own research, and just do what we tell you to do. And pretty soon they're rocking you into the institutional, right?
Mhm. I
And
mean, the
so,
same thing is happening with nurses. I mean,
yeah,
they do the same thing to the, "Oh, this is what the CDC is recommending. This is what we're doing." And yeah, they make you so busy that you don't even have time to question.
process.
Yeah, yeah, yep.
So it's like,
Yep.
so, and I really do try to stay apolitical because I don't think this is to fix this. I see both sides. I don't want to be divided anymore. I want
Mhm.
us to, I don't really care what's going on. I just want this fixed. If we don't fix this, I don't want to think about it. So we have
I mean,
to,
how many more, um, cycles of this can we go through before we're completely out of nurses? Like that's the scary thing is we've already lost so many with the first round, and I don't know.
well,
It doesn't seem like COVID is going anywhere anytime soon. So,
so let me ask, do we need nurses? Do we need physicians?
I mean, I think we need to treat them well, and then we'll have them.
But do we need them I've seen a robotic nurse freaked me out. And I and AI, and I'm like, AI will never take over, and now we can use AI appropriately,
I
but
think maybe for some doctors' jobs, I think they've already started to move in that direction. Like for like radiologists, like you could have literally a computer read, images.
that kind of makes me happy.
Yeah, right. So, but yeah, no, I don't think. I mean, even if they were to develop something, there's no way you could encompass everything that a nurse does. I mean, we have so many hats. How many hats do we have? Like,
Right.
you would never be able to create an AI that does everything that we do. And that's
Mhm.
why I think it's so important that nurses know, like, you actually do have a voice. You should say something. You should stand up for yourself, because what are they going to do without you? They treat you like you're expendable, but you're not. And you have that. That's your leverage.
Mhm. You know, our man, I could talk to you for a million years. I got to stop and think, because I have spent so much time saying, well, that's wrong, and 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 we've got to go back to the way it was before. No, no. So we don't really want to go back to the way it was before, but we need to make this
We need to
mistake.
move forward.
We
Yeah.
need to move forward. And so, how do we move forward in the best interest of the patient, in the
Mhm.
best interest of the people who love nursing and being a physician, and who really, I mean, there are surgeons out there doing robotic surgeries that are hurting people. You know, can we
Yeah.
do this on pigs and horses and dogs like a gazillion times to get it right before you bring a human in and hurt the human?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And oh, by the way, does the patient want that? And I think that is where we are really going through to a process of, I know what all the science says and all the experts say, but I know you and I love you, and here are your options.
Mm-hmm.
And you may not want to do what all the scientists say because
Mm-hmm.
of these other social considerations or religious situations, or just, you're tired
Mm-hmm.
and you're in this realm. Not that I don't want to slip into the realm of helping people commit suicide. I
Yeah.
just want them to have options of, here's the disease you are faced with.
Mm-hmm.
Here are the studies, and I will repeat what the studies show you 7 or 10 times. I don't care how many times we have to go over it. And then here are your options.
Yep. Well,
How
we
about
we live in a world where, well, we live in a country where our healthcare is monetized. So you have doctors going to their patients saying, let's do this surgery. And maybe they don't really need it. Or maybe, they could have, done therapy or something else and not gone and done the surgery. But it really is about the money, unfortunately. And
Mhm.
it's so unethical. I don't think people realize, I don't even think I knew how crazy it was until I was like knee deep in it. And I'm like, there's some very unethical things going on, and no one seems to notice.
Oh, we noticed.
Well, I mean, the people in it notice. I think the people who aren't in healthcare don't really see that side of it.
Right. Well, so, we used to get hit on the insurance side. Those nurses are telling us what to do and we want to do it and blah, blah, blah. Well, because we're following the science.
Mhm.
And you're asking to do this thing over here that costs $30,000 when the science says to do this $2 thing. And so the AMA came out and stomped on us as nurses back in the old days.
Mhm.
And they said, those nurses are outside of their scope of practice and they're directing care. We're like, no, we're not directing care. We're making sure that people get the best care at the lowest possible cost. And
Mhm.
they flushed us. So
Mhm.
when and then the legislature came in and the laws come in, and you just, you can, hindsight is 2020, baby.
Yep.
You can see all the steps that brought us here. And the only way I see us coming out is being responsible not only for the patient's health and well-being, but being business owners and being and supporting each other in our businesses. I really do. Um,
Mhm.
there's technology and all kinds of fun stuff that we can get connected to that would allow us to manage a significant number. I have a question for you. I've been dying to ask this because I love the show Midwives.
Okay.
Okay, call is it Call a Midwife?
Yes,
Call?
yep,
Yes.
mhm.
So, do you see us going back to that
Oh god.
model? I love it.
I feel like it's already sort of like trending in that direction. I feel like a lot more people are open to the idea of like not having a birth in a hospital if if everything's fine and there's not like any issues. Um yeah, I mean who knows? Who knows? It could be. I mean,
Well,
especially if there's such a mistrust within healthcare. I mean, I could see it. I could see doctors going back, into people's homes again and delivering in their homes. I mean,
mhm,
it's not totally out of the question. Do I think it'll be I think yeah, it might be like midwives and doctors,
mhm.
but yeah, I mean, I definitely see that going down that road.
Well, I love to think about the future, and I see many, many, many of our hospitals turning into homeless centers because we don't need our patients there. We need to, help people get
Mhm.
up off the streets,
Mhm.
get them some housing, and we'll take our nurses and our doctors, and we'll see you later. I don't know. Whatever it is, you have another 50 years. So remember this interview, and then in 50 years, you go, how far off were we in the trajectory of where we're going?
Yeah.
Uh,
Well, you said before you didn't want your daughters to be
nurses,
nurses.
yeah.
My when I told my family I was going to nursing school, my grandmother was very, very upset because she was also a
So
nurse.
nurse,
And she was like, you don't know what it's like. And, and things were a lot different then, too. I mean, like, they were definitely not treated. I feel like I'm not treated as badly as the stories she's told me from like doctors. Like she had a lot of like issues with doctors, like, speaking down to her and yeah, the kind of like, oh, you're a nurse and you don't know anything. I haven't had a whole, I mean, yeah, every once in a while you get somebody like that, but I think the majority now are like, we need you because you're the ones that are at the bedside and you're the ones that are going to tell us if something's wrong. So,
mhm.
um, so I think in that way it's a little bit different, but I mean, a lot of the same things that she was struggling with back then, like pay and staffing, whatever. It's
Still the same.
50 years later, we're still dealing with the same stuff.
Right. It's kind of interesting to me. It's like the people who care for other humans, the service of other people,
Mm-hmm.
are the most driven, most passionate people, and just so abused. We are so
Mm-hmm.
abused by the system. So we need to create a
And we take it. We don't we That's the thing. It's like
well,
nurses, we
but
just
what's the alternative? If we don't take it, what
yeah.
happens to the person we're caring for?
Right. Well, and we
That's
do
why
it
we
because
do
of our
this.
patients, but
Right,
it doesn't make it right. It doesn't mean that like the hospitals or whoever we work for are off the hook just because we are compassionate people.
right.
I think we've got to get to a point where everyone says, you know, I deserve more than skipping my lunch or skipping like going an entire 12-hour shift without taking a pee break. Like that is crazy. This is
But
2021.
those are the scars that we wear with pride. That, we don't take care of ourselves.
Mhm.
We are the last people to take care of ourselves
Yep.
because everybody needs so much attention all the time
Mhm.
that and it's embedded in us to we protect. We're protectors. It's That's what our calling is. We protect.
Mhm.
And so the protectors, we die young and we die. I think of the dog, right? When you got a protective dog,
Mhm.
And that's what we do. So we have to start protecting each other maybe.
Mhm. Absolutely.
You take this shift, I'll take the next shift, and we'll bring somebody brand new to take the third shift so that we
Mhm.
can go groom ourselves and take care of each other. Well,
But
this
I think
has been
until we start saying like that we're tired of what we've been going through and we're not
Mhm.
going to take the abuse anymore, like nothing, it's not going to change. Nothing's going to change. It's going to stay the same.
Right.
So,
I think we need to not only do that, like I ain't gonna take it no more. Take this job and shove it. I'm not working here no more. I think we have to do that, but then we also have to build our own future. We
mhm.
have to build it and not and understand that going in. So let's teach our daughters when they're 8 and 9 years old that your future is dependent on you and what
Mhm.
you build and the people you surround yourself to build it. Because, and sons, I'm not being, good Lord, I'm not being sexist in any way, but I'm saying empower our babies and our children to
Mhm.
say, you must build your own future.
Mhm.
And I see that in the young people. I love working with young people, and I just get the most because they're so kind to me. They teach me about the computer systems. They teach me about all this stuff that's going on. I feel like I'm hip and cool again, you know. And but it's because I've what I have found is I'm surrounding myself with the younger generation, and it
Mhm.
just pumps me up. I get
Well,
so
that's the
happy.
cool thing about nursing is that we're like one of the few professions where we have like 4 generations working
Right.
all at the same time with each other on the, the same level. Like it's crazy. I'm working with people who are like, so much younger than me, and I'm learning things about them, and I'm working with older people, I'm learning things about them, and we're all like teaching each other different things. And yeah, it's a very cool like environment to definitely be a
Right.
part of.
Right. I love nursing. I love nursing. Well, I'm gonna close this up with our little clip, but thank you so
Okay.
much. This
Yeah,
has been
absolutely.
so much fun, and thanks for telling your
Yeah.
story.
Yeah,
And
thanks for
then
having me.
you're welcome. And so for all of the beautiful nurses out there, we need you to consider joining Nursedeck at NURSE, D as in dog, ECK.com. It is a global community where you can find guidance and career resources, wink, wink, and hear all real life experience from nurses across the globe. Thank you, Kayla.
Thanks.
All right. Talk to you later.
Bye.
Bye.